And away we go with day number 2. And we mentioned it, there's a lot of different ways you can drag Rescue Randy down the field. And we'll see who goes with what strategy.
And Brandon, it should be noted too that these athletes have had absolutely no experience with Rescue Randy up to this point. So they weren't able to practice behind stage. This is the first time they're getting their hands on Randy.
Out in front in lane number 2, it's Brandon Luckett as the athletes finish the Rescue Randy drag for the first time and will make their way to Zeus. It'll be a thin rope on the first rope climb, a thick rope on the second one. It's 3/4 inch the diameter on the first, 1.5 inches on the second.
What we're going to find over the course of this event, especially following that marathon row, is that grip can be an issue. And when they have to come back into the park and they've got to do that first rope climb with 1.5 inch thick rope, they're going to make sure that they use their feet to get up that rope because the hands are probably going to be fried.
Now to even out the field, as you see our leaders making their way out the stadium, they're all going to have to run towards lane number 1 and then make their way back down towards the north side of the stadium, which is where they will exit and start the run. That is to level out the run. That won't be the case on the way back in.
Brandon, one of the things that I'm looking at is how much the vests are moving around. The athletes have a choice on how tight they put the vest on. And we might see some of the athletes tighten it up so that it doesn't move around as they run. And then you'll see other athletes that have it nice and loose. It allows them to breathe, but that vest is going to move quite a bit.
Leader entering the first 650-meter run is Tim Paulson, second-year Games athlete out of the East Regional, competing out of Ithaca, New York. And the summa cum laude graduate of Ithaca College is out in front as they work their way towards the O course.
And this run, which is about 650 meters, it's just long enough that it gets to be into that different energy system. It's really fatiguing, especially on the way back after you've gone through the O course.
So Paulson leading the way. It's going to be Marquand Jones in second, Brandon Luckett in third. And one of the things that you wanted to point out in this is especially about this run, not to go too hard.
You don't want to go too hard on the run, but here's the thing, Brandon. In an 11-minute time cap workout where we're looking at most of these athletes that are going to finish somewhere in that 8-9 minute range, you're looking at 5, even 6 minutes of running. So you can't waste time on the run, but you also don't want to blow yourself out. And then, as always, accuracy is everything. You need to make sure you get through the O course without making too many mistakes.
Paulson, among the top 3, is the only one with any experience on the O course. Remember, we did see this last year in a much different format, a whole lot faster. Didn't have the drag, didn't have the run before it, but he does have a little bit of experience. How much is that going to come into play in this?
I think it's a huge factor. It allows these guys to, if you've been able to play on this thing and you've got some experience on these different apparatus, it makes it easier because, again, they had some time to rehearse and practice the O course, but definitely not with Rescue Randy. So experience pays off.
So already through the hurdles, this is the rope wall, and it has been a muggy and just kind of like a wet day here. It's not raining or anything like that, just foggy. One of those, Sam on the update show before we started said it feels like we're staying in a cloud, and that's a pretty good description of it. And you can see the footing making their way over the rope wall was a bit tough.
So what is the low next?
It's probably a little bit slick with moisture, and what we're going to see right away as these athletes start to make their way underneath that rope, if they've chosen to have their vest on loose, it just allows a little bit more room to get snagged on the rope as they go underneath.
Past the low net, onto the cargo net is Paulson. He's continuing to lead. It's Luckett in second. Alex Anderson sitting in the third position. Now this is going to be one of those possible choke points. There's only 5 spaces on the cargo net. They're allowed to go 2 within each one of those spaces.
And Brandon, I'm looking at a couple different styles here, and people with experience are using one vertical rope to go up. They're not grabbing the horizontal parts with their hands. They're actually grabbing the vertical slat, and that allows them to have one trail straight up and down.
And your new leader is going to be Brandon Luckett. Somebody that had a rough start to the competition, being involved in one of those accidents on the bike event number 1, and it's him and Paulson side by side as they go to the rope transfer.
1 and 2. Trying to maintain their lead. This is the midway point in this event. It's going to be Luckett.
Luckett clears Paulson on the rope transfer. Next up is the rope swing. This is the next to last obstacle on the O course.
And Brandon, it should be noted too that last year on the O course they weren't wearing vests, and they were doing it as a sprint event, so a lot more taxing this time around.
Final obstacle is the monkey bars. Brandon Luckett will make his way back to the North Park Stadium as we have about 5 minutes until the 11-minute time cap. All that remains is this 650-meter run, 2 rope climbs, and 1 last drag of Rescue Randy down the field. He's got a pretty solid lead. It might be a bit insurmountable at this point unless somebody makes a huge push on this run.
And that can be really costly. If somebody pushes the pace on this run, it could hurt them when they get to the rope climb. But some of the bottom heats here, if these guys want to make a move, somebody's going to have to roll the dice.
A moment ago spoke about Paulson being a summa cum laude graduate, one of the more intelligent athletes in the field. I would imagine Brandon Luckett could make an argument for that as well. Graduate student in applied physics and medicine, also known as how radiation interacts with the body. Some smart guys here in the games, as well as being very, very fit. Luckett out in front. Elliott Simmons and Alex Anderson in the race for second behind him. And they're moving at a bit of a quicker pace. And this battle for second might become a battle for the lead very quickly as Anderson and Simmons both making a move on Luckett as they make their way back to the North Park Stadium.
And Brandon, they've definitely closed up that gap. It's down to just a couple feet behind them.
Keep in mind, Luckett was the fastest to get through Rescue Randy drag on the first time in. We'll see if he can keep that going the second time they do the drag. It might be what he needs to hold off 2 hard chargers, and Alex Anderson and Elliott Simmons. And Anderson brought a towel with him, which is pretty smart.
That's a veteran move right there, and you can see he closed up that gap. He had quite a bit of a lead, Luckett did, going into that run, and now it's just down to a few feet. And if you're Luckett and you've been leading, and now you can hear the guys breathing down your neck, it puts a lot of pressure on you to keep moving.
Important to note, Brandon Luckett is in lane number 2. He's going to have to go all the way to the south end of the stadium before he makes the turn. So the leader is actually going to wind up being Alex Anderson, who will have his lane closest. They made up the difference on the way out of the stadium, so it's level on the way back in. Anderson already through the 1 rope climb. Onto the thin rope. It's Anderson first, Simmons second, Luckett third, all within about 1.5 seconds of each other. There's the touch on the top of the beam at Zeus. And Anderson will be the first one to rescue Randy. Luckett in second. Simmons will be third. And how well have you taken care of your arms on the way through this event? It's going to be Luckett making the pass as Anderson drops Rescue Randy. Luckett was the fastest with Rescue Randy on the way towards Zeus, and on the way towards the finish line, once again continues to be the fastest. He's got 1 segment of the floor left. And it was a rough start to day number 1 for Luckett, but a great start to day number 2 as he'll set the time to beat at 9 minutes, 27 seconds. Elliott Simmons will be 6 seconds back in second place. Anderson going with the straps to drag Rescue Randy to the finish line. And he's in at 9:44. Next finisher will either be Con Porter or Mitchell Stevenson. It's going to be Stevenson that'll get the spot just ahead of this man, Porter, as we've got 1 minute remaining until the time cap.
You can see that low drag there. Lots of Randy sitting on the ground, and that friction just makes it so much harder. You want to try to get as much mass off the ground as possible.
This is a good sign for Saxon Panchik. We had that question about where he is health-wise after the row and having to be helped off. But he'll finish event number 5 under the time cap, 10 minutes and 23 seconds. Tim Paulson was the first man out of the stadium. It was the 6th man back to the stadium, and he looks to be our 7th finisher here in this opening heat. And he'll cross the line at 10 minutes and 45 seconds. Final 10 seconds, last 2 remaining. Marquand Jones, Pablo Chalfun. Jones is about halfway through. He will get credit for the segment. It'll be 2 reps shy of finishing this event. So we'll have 7 of 9 in our opening heat, able to beat the 11-minute time cap, led by Brandon Luckett, who will set the time to beat at 9 minutes and 27.47 seconds after Heat 1 of the Battleground, presented by the United States Marine Corps.
Well, Brandon,